All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here, for joining us tonight. Sorry about the starting a couple minutes late. We're having just a little bit of technical issues getting started, but I, definitely thank you all. And we're excited to have this conversation and to, get into this conversation about racial justice and community engagement. I'm Tony Quintana. I'm the plant-based eating program manager with Animal Protection of New Mexico. And today we are honored to have special guest Moneka Stevens joining us. Since 2000, Moneka has worked in community development and curriculum design focused on leadership and positive youth development. She served as the former director of New Mexico Youth Alliance, a statewide youth council connected to community transformation through policy development. She also served as the co-director of Community Learning and Public Service, a university-based organization developed through community partnerships to engage university students in youth development within marginalized communities. And this brief bio really just scratches the surface of Moneka's work, as she'll share in just a minute, of all the different types of projects and community engagement and racial justice work that she's involved in. So, like I said, we're honored to welcome Moneka, and she'll be joining on the call with video in just a minute. So just like we did, for those that joined last week's webinar, this is the second installment of our three-part series on intersectional veganism. Last week, we started off to frame the conversation. I'm going to do a little similar thing. We basically started off by giving a little background info and a couple definitions to get us started and to frame our conversation. So in this Intersectional Veganism Webinar Series, we're exploring some of the ways that being vegan helps support other forms of activism and why it's important for animal rights activists to actively support other social justice movements. We're also looking to deepen our understanding of what it means to stand in solidarity with those fighting to end systemic racism. So again, this isn't just a conversation for vegans. It's not just a conversation for animal rights folks. And it's not just a conversation for people doing other social justice work. This is a conversation for all of us to come together and understand how our work intersects and supports each other. And so to help us understand what we're talking about, these definitions are going to help frame our conversation. So veganism can be defined as a way of living which seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purposes. There are many ways to embrace vegan living. So I like this definition because it includes, the aspect of as far as is possible and practicable. We definitely don't live in a perfect world, and sometimes in some ways, everybody has different experiences, different access, different resources. And so it's important to include that in the definition as far as is possible and practicable. And also the idea that there are many ways to embrace vegan living. At Animal Protection of New Mexico, we promote plant-based eating as one way to support our animal protection and, working toward animal rights and making humane the new normal. So, that's one aspect of it. With intersectionality, that can be defined as describing the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate forms of inequality. So that's what we're looking at tonight, the interconnectedness of, what Moneka is going to share with us, and inequality with animal rights and inhumane treatment of animals. So what is intersectional veganism? We're leaving that open, and through this series, through this conversation tonight, hopefully we can define that together. Yeah, thank you for taking the time to be here. We really, really appreciate it. I know how much you have going on. And, you know, especially nowadays, that kind of just, with everything going on, it just seems to bubble, right?
Definitely. Thank you all. Greetings, everyone. I thank you so for being patient, and thank you, Tony, for that really introduction on what veganism is and plant-based and intersectionality. Thank you for the work that you do. And the reason why I'm running a little late is because my son and I were at mutual aid today, and he was being loved by community in another room, doing lots of painting and lots of things, and he misplaced some items that he had to find. And if any of you are parents out there, when your child misplaces certain items, they have to find them. And I had to help him find those items, really determined to find them. And so I'm logging on with my computer shortly, but glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't have even been able to join us if you hadn't found those items.
Yes. But we found them.
I know all about that. So just to kind of get us started, can you just share, Moneka, a little bit about what you do now with Future Focused Education?
Yes, at Future Focused Education, I'm the Community Engagement Director, and I get to fantastically work with lots of schools around innovation and how curriculum can come alive. So students are connected to learning that directly impacts their community. So instead of like the curriculum, how it was when most of us who are part of this today are in school, you know, you go to English class, math class, science class, and then you just regurgitate what you hear, right? And you keep going. Like with this, the way the schools work is the community pitches the ideas. So they pitch the ideas of, it could be veganism, it could be hip hop activism, it could be gardening, and the community pitches the curriculum. And from that, the school is able to connect it to the standards, but it's relevant, right? So like students have gotten into like mutual aid efforts. They've done, for example, eye exams, and we know that eye exams are connected to like diabetes, and so they can learn about that and learn about eye care. And they've put on health fairs for people to get like free eye exams. And so like the rigorous learning that can happen there, and they can learn about, in that class, they learned like about the anatomy of the eye. They got to learn about what optometrist is. It was connected to their department to get more Latinos, Chicanos involved in those type of careers. And so the learning that happens in the school is the ideas, it's an asset to the community. So the school is an asset to the community. And it's a very way to look at how we do education. So like when you think about it, young people are planners, they're change agents, and they're organizing to better their communities.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I've had the opportunity to work with some of the students that are doing those types of, and it's interesting how much veganism comes up or how much plant-based eating comes up because it's all, you know, interconnected. When I was talking to them, it was about food justice and about access to healthy food in the community and looking at what, you know, what they can buy right outside the school. You know, it's easier to buy alcohol and cigarettes than it is to buy produce, and just getting into those conversations. So yeah, that's
yeah. And you all, as well as the outreach, you know, provided when I worked at Health Leadership High School, food. There's several students who became vegans after being like exposed and learning about like what is food justice and what is like quality of life mean to you, and how they're also learning at the school about diabetes and things that impact their community. And there were students who I didn't even know about who were like vegans. And so they're always sending me recipes and different things. So that's really cool that some students were already vegan, some students went vegan, or some students eat less meat, you know, just by being exposed and learning about like how systematic racism impacts our food.
right. And so, I mean, while you bring that up,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, from your perspective, how does systemic racism impact our food choices, our access to food?
So we know like there's this like massive food production that's happening, right? And we know like with this mass food production, like they have to make chicken taste this way and ground beef taste this way. And so like there's all this like hormones and different things being pumped into foods, which is causing like so many health disparities amongst communities of color, people who are impoverished communities. And that's the food that's in their grocery stores. Like that's the food that we can afford, right? Compared to people that are affluent who can afford other access and healthy foods. We also systematic racism, like the exploitation, like of where our food comes from. So most of our food, it does not come from local. It comes from all over the world, and people are being like are working hours, you know, in Africa and Mexico, and in certain parts of all over the world. And they're doing this, they're being exploited, right? Their labor is being exploited for this massive food production for consumers to have, right? Especially consumers in this country, right? Because they want more, like the big supersize things that happen. And so we also see like, if you ever map out your neighborhood, you know, and compared with another neighborhood, and like where I grew up in the sticks, South Broadway, right? So we have like the 7-Elevens, the Church's Chickens, you know, we have all of those fast food chains that are really unhealthy, but oftentimes even if they're unhealthy, they're affordable, like the McDonald's and the dollar menu, right? And so that's strategic. And then what happens is that food is put into our bodies, we consume it, and it creates a lot of health challenges for us. You know, we see that before statistically it was African, and when I mean African, I mean Black. So African and Indigenous women, the number one cause of death was heart disease. Now it's the number one death of all women, right? And like that's how bad systematic racism is. It harms all of us, and it's in our food, and it's in. And I know this is about veganism, but it's in everyday life that causes so much harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is about veganism, but it, you know, you can't put any like one topic or theme, I think, in a bubble or in a vacuum, right? Because it's systemic racism. So you're talking about how it impacts other areas, but you know, our food as well. Like we're just having that conversation, but you know, that's one way how, if you know, people who are vegan need to, I think it's important to consider how else can they support, how else can we fight systemic racism, because you know, that's like the underlying issue that spills out into all these other things, right?
I agree. So like when people are being exploited, like picking the food, right? Picking the food that we consumed, whether it's just plants, right? Like just veggies, like where our veggies come from. Like think about the campaigns that people were doing against Wendy's, right? Because Wendy's wasn't paying the workers who were picking the tomatoes, right? That's all intersectionality. And so veganism doesn't mean no harm, right? I think there's a misconception about that, because there's so much exploitation around people who are growing the food, right? So they're growing the food, they're picking the food with like so much love, and then like, but they're not paid for it, right? They're exploited for their labor, they're harmed, they're abused for their labor that they're doing. We also know people, I organize with Millions for Prisoners. So we also know people behind the walls, right? How they are forced to plant food and pick food, and they're paid, you know, sometimes not even $1 an hour, right? And that goes back to the 13th Amendment, where after people who were in like slavery ended, but it never did, right? It just continued to manifest, right? And
Right.
so like we think about private prison and the prison industrial complex, right? That's a $60 billion industry, right? And we know places in Louisiana and Texas and other places that are planting and harvesting food that again people are consuming. So there's so many ways these issues intersect.
Right. I mean, that's something that really opened my eyes to the social justice aspect of veganism when I learned about dairy farms that were being run by prison labor, right? And it's just like, no way is that happening today. But then also, you know, you learn about there are, you know, potatoes you can buy that were, and lots of, like you said, plant foods. So to me, it's like being vegan is like the baseline. Like that's where, like, you know what I mean? That's just the
Mm-hmm.
step to, and then from there. So I know I have a eliminated that layer of
Mhm.
cruelty, and then how can we improve on that? So looking at where does your produce come from, where does everything, if even if you know grab some fast food, you know, people would be like, well, Wendy's French fries are vegan, but are they cruelty free?
Exactly. Thank
And
you for bringing up the dairy farms. I completely forgot about all the dairy farms that are run by people behind the walls as well. Yeah.
yeah, and then when you follow the line to where that food ends up, you know, I found that even some of the like the higher priced and therefore maybe higher quality cheeses at Whole Foods came from, you know, were produced by prison labor. So
hmm
yeah.
Yeah. Because I found that out, I'm no longer a Whole Foods shopper, right? Because of like I found out how they were treating their workers, and that alone for me was enough to like not shop at Whole Foods. And then I started finding out about their cheeses coming from uh, the milk comes from private prisons, you know, and what they do too. And so it's like that's capitalism, right? That's systematic racism, and all of that creates complex challenges and conversations we need to be having, like in our communities, deeply having, because we are consumers, and the more of the need to consume, the more exploitation that happens.
Hmm. Absolutely. So what was, you know, can you tell us how you became vegan? Like what was your moment? What was your journey like?
Yeah, so I've been vegetarian for a few years before. I've been pescatarian before. I like learned a lot about health and social determinants of health, and you know, I was constantly exhausted, just because of like the weight this world puts on us, and just not taking care of myself, like my health, like I needed to. And I worked at a health school and learning about all the disparities and the challenges amongst women. And I'm a single mom, and just learning about like African women having like this high rate of heart disease, right? And that being the cause of death, and that scared me. And I'm like, I'm the only mom that my son has. Like, I have only one body. I have to take care of myself. And I was at an event that was uplifting Indigenous women, and like talking about recipes and how to make recipes culturally appropriate. And I was there with young people. So I was there with a variety of young women who were in high school, and we're having these conversations, again, being exposed to healthy eating, like just the exposure and being able to be at that conference, right? Um, and we had like these really great conversations, and got to talk to people who were vegan and vegetarian, and like that was like a pivotal moment in my life. And then I was like organizing, and I started meeting like organizers who were like vegetarian or vegan, and we would have space where we were building community, and there would be like vegan options too. And so little by little, I started, you know, working toward being vegan. And I also saw like my energy change, right? And my son is not 100% vegan, but he doesn't really eat meat as much. And so, and so, and so it was a good transition, and like for us to talk about it ourselves too, like what we eat. And like he's 9 now. I think he was 7 when we started having conversations like what's in our food, and why do we eat what we eat. And I wish like I would have had more like at a younger age I would have known more. I think maybe it was in college before I was exposed to like healthy eating. Like going to McDonald's was a treat, because like when you're impoverished, and then it's being sold when you're living in poverty, and it's sold as the food to eat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
like I was in track, and we would eat there, and like, man, if you could get a cheeseburger, it was a win, because like but like $1 was so much money, right? You know, that's a lot of money when you're living in poverty. And so I remember that being a treat for us. And I don't ever remember learning about healthy eating till I was in college. So I'm really glad that my son's being exposed to like he eats tons of fruits and vegetables, and that we're able to have like conversations about why we eat what we eat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And it's interesting because, you know, I feel like I learned a lot about healthy eating, you know, before college or before being an adult. I feel like your journey sounds pretty similar to mine, actually. You know, I've been vegetarian, pescatarian, learned about health, really the social determinants and, you know, social justice and animal rights. Those are the things that really keep me vegan. You know, I'm not so good at always being healthy and whole foods. You know, like I fall back on foods that I grew up on, you know, like toxic foods
Mm-hmm.
that are like ingrained in my memory, and like for comfort food and all of that stuff.
Yeah, those feed our soul, right? We don't want to have to throw them all out.
And it's a struggle. It's like a daily struggle. Today I'm trying to work on the things that that are both, you know, from my childhood, comforting and healthy, you know. So like my mom used to make us chamomile and spearmint tea whenever I was sick.
Uh-huh.
So, like that's something that comforts my soul and is also not toxic for me, you know.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That balance,
Right,
right?
right. So trying to
Yeah.
think of those things as opposed to, you know, fried potatoes with corned beef and all this stuff.
Well, you're making me think about like other reasons why like I felt veganism was for me, and it is linked to systematic racism. Like I really feel like they're trying to kill us. They're trying to poison us with all these toxins, right? There's I was reflecting on what I'm eating is not different. Like, so what's different about what's in my food, right? Because my eating habits had not changed.
Right.
And that's when I started learning. And I can't remember all those documentaries, but they're all on Netflix. And but I was watching those, you know, and watching them with students and watching them with my son. And it's like, wow, they're really putting a lot of chemicals that are poisonous, right? And we're eating them, right? And we're consuming them. And so it was like it's intentional, right? To create all these health challenges, especially for people of color, because we're the ones who are buying those foods compared to others. We don't even have access to trails. Like I think about where I grew up and where I live now, we don't have trails, but yet if you go all the way to Tramway in Albuquerque, there's tons of walking trails, there's tons of room, there's tons of places to walk. Yet alone in our communities, like they're not walkable and they're not walkable. I remember the South Valley just getting sidewalks. You know, they didn't have sidewalks at all for the longest time. So if you can't walk, you know, you're going to use transportation. So like all of that stuff is intentional.
Yeah, you're bringing up, yeah, so many really good points. Yeah, we used to rent a house in the North Valley in a nicer neighborhood, and there was trails, there was safe places to walk. And now, you know, I have sidewalks, but there's often needles on the side of the road. Um, who knows what the neighbors are going through at the time, you know, like there's just, there's a lot to it really. And I was gonna say what you were talking about too with the, how you feel like they're trying to kill us, or, you know, they're trying to, I think, at least keep people down. Because like when I was saying, I learned a lot about healthy eating, but now that I've been really going deeper and learning a lot more, I feel like it wasn't healthy eating, because what I was learning was the food pyramid or the my plate and stuff like that. And part of my health journey was I was determined to break the cycle of childhood obesity in my family. So when my son was born, it was like, I need to break that. And that's when I learned about, you know, lactose intolerance and how the USDA pushes 3 servings of dairy every single day for every single American. And it's like knowing that statistically more than half my family is lactose intolerant, you know, and like among, you know, Black people, it's even higher. And indigenous people, like we're looking at 80-90% are lactose intolerant. So like it feels intentional.
And it really, like, I mean, the got milk, like everyone knows that, right? If
Yeah.
you're what, I don't know, 50 and below, maybe, you know, 60 to probably what, 20? Like huge campaigns. I meant dairy farms made billions, you know, because of like that consuming of milk. And I'm lactose, like I'm not 100% lactose intolerant, but what's really interesting is when I was a kid, I couldn't drink the milk that they sold in the stores. And so my grandparents hooked up with the farm and they would give us the milk directly from like a cow that was like natural. So I could only drink soy milk or that kind of milk because like it would make me sick. And so that speaks to, like you were saying, like there's the high percentage of like, it's just not natural to consume cow's milk.
Right.
But because it's been pushed, this false narrative, it's, you know, it's people don't understand that, right? And they have to unpack that. And so like my son, he does not drink, he's never liked dairy milk, like even like when at, you know, 1.5, when they're able to drink milk. And his pediatrician was like, that's fine. He doesn't need to have like cow's milk. Find another substitute. And she gave me like options and information. And she was saying, she's not from this country. And she was like, you Americans. And I was like, I don't identify as that, but that's a whole nother topic. She was like, but she was saying like, you don't have to consume milk. And this country is so obsessed with consuming milk. And I was like, yep, because it's to profit. It's to like profit billions of dollars to dairy farms. And so, but I had to like unpack that with my pediatrician because I was like, well, he has strong bones. Like, what else can he drink? Because I didn't drink milk and it wasn't an issue, but like he's a 1-year-old child. So like she like just walked me through and helped me unpack like there's other options. There's like rice milk, there's almond milk. And find what works best for him. Like he's gonna know what's best for his body, and that's okay.
I'm so glad you had that. With my older son, he didn't like dairy milk either, but we were so worried. Like you said, he's 1 year old. We're so worried about it. We used to mix soy milk with whole cow's milk to get him to drink it, thinking that that's what he needed. And I feel so mad. You know,
I did that too. That's so funny. I did that too at first. And he was like, "Bleh." And I was like, oh, wait, it's not working. And so thank goodness, like I had a pediatrician that was supportive and not just like about like consuming dairy, right? It was about your child knows what's best for his body. And that's okay if he's only going to drink almond milk. Like there's other ways for him to get vitamin D. There's other ways, and let's look up foods right together that he might like that to eat, that can help for like that nutritional value that you're seeking. Because like that dairy is also full of fat, you know, and like that's not healthy to have that.
Yeah, I'm really glad, yeah, that you had that. And depending on people's access or, you know, to healthcare, it could go a lot of different ways. And the other thing is the majority of plant-based milks now are fortified with calcium and vitamin D. So, and that dairy milk has, so it's not even an issue. So we did have a question, and I actually wanted to circle back and come to this also. If you could talk more about your work with Mutual Aid and any other organizations working to help provide food in response to food insecurity.
Yeah, man, I love Burke because there are so many organizations that have been working on this for years. I remember in high school starting a community garden, right, in South Broadway, Martha's Garden, that still exists to this day. And my son is involved in the garden at his school, right? I think about Project Feed the Hood that is through a Southwest Organizing Project, and it's in the International District. I think about like La Acultura Network, and they have a CSA program, and they're connected to like local farms. And with their CSA program, they you can buy I forgot, but there's 2 different sizes you can buy. If you buy the big size, you can definitely split it. Like I used to do that and split it with my family. But it's fresh veggies that you can get like once a week or once a month. And so like those programs make sure that we're supporting local, right? And that you're also, you know what you're consuming, like you know what you're eating is coming for local. So there's, and even I think of Three Sisters Kitchen, and they provide food to families too. So there's so many different opportunities here in Albuquerque that are involved. Or Los Jardines Institute, right? They're a farm as well. La Placita, they were providing produce to AP at Albuquerque Public Schools. So there's so many different like grassroots organizations as well as nonprofit organizations really working on food insecurity. New Mexico is a food desert. 1 in 4 children go to bed hungry, 1 in 5 adults go to bed hungry. And it's so important that people have access to food and that we're sharing with our community members. And so the pandemic, with the pandemic and the stay-in order, organizations got together. So like Millions for Prisoners, Save the Kids and Fight for Our Lives, and then other individuals got together, you know, on a Saturday, right after the stay-in order policy went in place, and that Monday. So I believe since March 16th, so it's about a little over 6 months, have been organizing in community, sharing food with one another. And so it were solely run off gifting donations, that the people gift monetary, people give food, they give food from their gardens, like tomatoes, I think came in today, the New Mexico Animal Protection, you all provide, you all purchase from La Acultura Network, and that food goes to 100 families a week, getting fresh produce, and it's supporting like local foods as well, local foods. And we deliver to about 50 families a day, and there's about 125 volunteers, and people have access to a variety of foods. Not all this food is vegan, right? But people can identify if they're vegan, if they're vegetarian, or identify like what they need. But we are always trying to make sure that fruits and vegetables go into every care package as much as possible. And it's not just Albuquerque. So the beautiful volunteers that serve community and love even go up to 30 miles outside of Albuquerque. We have had people drive all the way to Santa Fe and beyond, right? But we're trying to, we're coordinating with Santa Fe Mutual Aid, and so they can do that. But there's so many groups. Oh, I forgot, you said food insecurity. The Red Nation, they do a solidarity feed every Sunday. John Brown Breakfast Club, every Saturday, way even before the pandemic. They're on First and Silver, providing burritos to our unsheltered community, or anybody can go over there at 10 o'clock. So because food insecurity is such a challenge here, there are so many people on the, whether they're part of an organization or not, growing food and sharing it with one another. It's critical in a state like ours because of the food insecurity that we have.
Mm. And to me, mutual aid is such a beautiful thing, because it's different than like these other, you know, food banks or food distributions. You show up and you get a box and you get what you get. And it's typically not produce. It's all like shelf stable stuff, you know, but whereas like with mutual aid, if it's hard to put into words, but you know, people can tell you what their diets are and actually get food that's meaningful to them, that's nourishing to them. You know, there's a lot more, you know, respect and dignity and it's true solidarity. You know, it's not
it's solidarity, not charity, for sure.
solidarity and charity. Yeah,
it's solidarity. And we're also, where we're located now, we're located directly across from a park, right, that has a lot of our unsheltered community members there. And when they can, so what's really beautiful is there are people who order care packages for their neighbors, even for their neighbors who are unsheltered. And then they walk it over, and they're building community in a pandemic, right? People who are also like close to the park, they'll walk over and we'll ask them like, well, what kind of foods do you like? Or is there any foods that you're allergic to? Because we want to know, if we have it, we want them to have what they need, right? Have what they would like to eat. And so we buy a variety of foods. So it's solely donations. It's solely ran by volunteers. Many of the volunteers are organizers. They're connected to so many organizations across Albuquerque. Some of them are not involved in organizations at all, but it's all of us. Mutual aid belongs to everyone. It belongs to every person who, we even have people who are in Santa Fe doing remote, some of the remote work, or a couple people who even moved out of Albuquerque, but they still wanted to help, and they had to move out of Albuquerque to be with their families. You know, the pandemic is very serious. And what do we see? And when we talk about social determinants of health, 93% of people dying from the pandemic, it's over 200,000 people. 93% are African, indigenous, or Chicano, right? Again, it's all linked to social determinants of health, right? And that's the number one reason why people are dying in this pandemic, because of that, because of systematic racism. Again, that intersectionality that we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so how can people get involved in and or support this work?
Yeah, so for mutual aid, we, the email is, so that you can go to Fight for Our Lives. Let's do that. Go to Fight for Our Lives website, and they have a link around mutual aid. When you go to that link, you can, it says it's there to donate. So you can donate monetary, gift monetary donations. You can sign up to volunteer. So there's an email there as well to volunteer. We do 2 onboardings a week. We're probably going to have an onboarding this Saturday. So if you email us today or Friday, we'll have an onboarding on Saturday. So we do 2 onboardings a week. People who can also provide donations. Thank you so much for putting that in the chat there. Can drop off donations between Monday through Friday, 10 to 1. What's really cool is a lot of high school students are involved. A lot of youth organizers are involved in helping this run. And there's a group of high school students who like come on a regular twice a week, and they said, how can we help more? And they like made a GoFundMe for mutual aid. You know, they took the initiative. And when we say mutual aid belongs to you all, it belongs to everybody. There's another group who a group of Albuquerque high school students, they want to do a food drive, right? And they, it's important to them. And they said, we want this food drive to be solidarity. And I'm like, that's great. Let's set this up. So there's so many ways people can get involved. People can care package. So there's opportunities to actually care package in mutual aid. People can deliver. So they can pick up the care packages and deliver. They can support with social media things like that we're spreading. So there's many different ways that people can bring their gifts and talents. We want to make this sustainable. We have no idea how long we're going to be in this pandemic. I forgot to also mention, anybody who submits the form for a care package will receive a care package. There's no qualifications at all. We have a form in English or in Spanish. And everything, we keep everything anonymous. Everything is confidential. No information is shared. We're just asking for basic information like name, phone number, address, dietary restrictions, allergies, and if they have any special delivery instructions. People can also call and leave a voicemail, and we'll call them back as well within 2 to 3 days, and we'll submit the form on them, because we know not everybody has access to technology. I think my auntie learned how to text right before the pandemic. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm in a chain text with her, my mom, and my auntie. So I'm trying to get out of that chain text, but I'm so glad, like my auntie, you know, who's in her 60s knows how to text, like, but not everyone knows how to do that, right? So we want to make sure that there's no barrier for people to request. So some people, like I said, request for their neighbors. The other thing that we see happening now during this pandemic, because there is not a rent freeze, and because people do not have access to income, because they are losing their jobs, right? Because of systematic racism, again, we see families who have now within the last 2 months, like 3, 4, and 5 families living together in a household with them. And that's what we do. Like as a community, we take care of one another to survive. And they wouldn't have had to make that choice if we had a rent freeze, right? So if you don't have access to a job, how can you purchase food? How can you meet your basic needs? How can you pay for rent? And so all those issues are extremely complex, that we as a community need to talk about.
Yeah. And so I love the model, the mutual aids model, you know, taking away all the barriers and also increasing access, because, you know, I'm glad you pointed that out, because over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've known people that have genuine food insecurity and need help, but they can't get food stamps because the income level and how many kids they have, and, you know, the numbers don't work out, so they don't get a lot of assistance or the assistance they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's so infuriating, and people are, you know, stuck in this, like, do I lie to get what I need, or do I stay
Mm-hmm.
true, and all of this. And so just eliminating all of that, you know, if you need help, it's there. That is so
Mm-hmm.
important.
And I forgot to mention, people can request care packages once a week, right? Other communities that are a little bit farther, like Edgewood and Majority, will do like food boxes, because we also have, all of us are volunteers. So we might not have a driver who can deliver once a week outside of Albuquerque. So we kind of do a food box there, but people can request a care package once a week. And sometimes we know there's food emergencies. So people will get a hold of us and say, like yesterday, there was somebody who had a food emergency and they had no food in their home. So we were able to get food to them immediately 2 days in a row to make sure they had what they needed. Yeah, that's really important. And now people are asking, like, do you know where clothes are? Do you know where blankets are? Do you know where these resources are? And we're able to connect to other organizations that we know to help provide some of those support.
It's another beautiful thing too, because then you're not stuck with this, like, oh, we good on the first of the month, and then it's, you know, scraps at the end until we get to our next monthly
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for all that. That's amazing. That's
It's a huge community wide effort, and I'm very, it's beautiful to see how much people like give and love, and like to read the messages that people share with delivery drivers and care packages. Just deep gratitude. And I'm like, it's beautiful to see like what our world could really look like when we show up for one another, right? And when we're taking care of one another, and not when we're like fighting for scraps, you know, but we're actually in solidarity teching one another. And that's what we see like glimpse of through mutual aid.
mm-hmm. That was so well stated. Thank you. Yeah, everything you just said was beautiful. Um, so I do want to ask too. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit before we run out of time, and people that are still on, you know, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. But in, you know, from your point of view, what does intersectional veganism look like to you?
I'm laughing because I always tell my son, like, you're going to be an animal rights activist, huh? Can you please love people when you do? And I'm not trying to make a generalization, but I have a hard time organizing with animal rights activists, because they don't see the intersectionalities that we just continuously talked about today, right? Like, they don't see the intersectionality of food insecurity, right? Or the prison industrial complex, or the exploitation of labor. And so they're really centered on that one issue, animal rights, when there's so many layers that are connected to it. And so like that to me is intersectionality, right? Is really deep diving on how these issues, they're not alone in a vacuum, right? There's no issue that is singular that's alone in a vacuum. They're all interconnected, and some interconnected than others. And so I would say that's what intersectionality looks like. And you were bringing up things that like I completely forgot about. And so I'm so glad that you were surfacing them up, because they're all so layered and complex.
Right. And personally, I think if animals are your focus, if like that's what you're driven to do, you know, everybody can have their focus, but it doesn't mean you put your blinders on to everything else and then that's all you care about, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
that's kind of what
Yeah.
I feel. And my younger son, he is an animal, but that's his thing, right? Animals, animals, animals. But just naturally, he thinks intersectionally, right? So he said
Beautiful.
one of his dreams is like, I want to have a vegan restaurant that has good vegan food, and then I can use the money from that to have a homeless shelter because I don't like people not having food.
Mm,
You know what I mean? And I was just like,
that's
oh,
so
I'm so
beautiful.
proud as a parent too.
He can hang out my son.
Yeah, it's like that's
Rub off.
right. Um,
Yeah,
and same
that's
thing.
beautiful.
Yeah, my older son, he loves animals and he's down with it, but that's not his number one thing, right?
Mhm.
He's kind of thinking about other stuff, but including that within his, lifestyle and way of,
Same thing, yeah.
you know
My
what I
son
mean?
said same thing, like, I can draw animals and we can use the money to help people who are unsheltered, or his thing is everyone should have a home. He's
Mhm.
always been like that since as a kid. He did, when we would see people driving, he's like, Mom, everyone should have a home. He's like, and we can use the money, like, he's this beautiful artist, and we can use this money, and the money could be used to make sure everyone has a home. So we're doing right. Like you're saying, it's natural for them to see that intersectionality so they can have their niche and their passions and things that are important to them. um, but being able to see how all of this connects.
Yeah, and I think we all can. And another thing to point out too is it's deep work that takes a lot of time, right? Like I don't think I'm perfect. I know I'm far from it, and we all are. And maybe some people listening, this might be hard for you to hear, or there might be some uncomfortable moments, and that's part of it. Like if you're really doing the deep work, you're going to be uncomfortable sometimes. I've been
Mm-hmm.
curious about things, and then I have to think about it, and then I make changes based on that. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's part of the work. Just a reminder to everyone, that's part of the work is learning,
Yeah.
getting out of your comfort zone over and over and over and over again.
I agree. Like, I'm in such a huge learning journey. Like, I know more about systematic racism than I know about veganism. Like, and I've gone to like conferences and read books, but I've like every day I'm learning so much. When you think you've learned enough, um, like like my friend Celinda always says, like, if your ego is bigger than the movement, like, you're no longer good to the movement, right? And so we always have to be continuously learning. So like, I would love to hear what people think about veganism that are on here, and learn from them as well. Like, we're always like learning together.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. If anybody wants to, email thoughts or share them on social media and tag us, I want to hear what other people have to share as well. That was a good point. And when we were talking about mutual aid and food aid and food assistance, I'm seeing some animal rights organizations really stepping up right now and doing some good work. I want to shout out Vegan Outreach. They're doing vegan food aid all over the world actually, and in big amounts. Like they're really bringing it. And there's Food Not Bombs, which is kind of everywhere too, and here in Albuquerque, providing vegan food. At Animal Protection in New Mexico, our promoting plant-based eating program is doing some of that too, on a little bit smaller scale. But we partnered with MoGro, Mobile Grocery, and
Yeah.
and Vegan Outreach too. So they're delivering food to the Rayma Navajo community, where
Yeah.
they're talk about food desert and lack of access.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there is some really good, intersectionality and happening there.
I think that's really good too, because I think there's like this myth that like veganism is like European centric. And I think it's because they've kind of like they've taken the narrative, right? Veganism, like Rastafarians were vegan. Like there's so many different cultures and traditions where people have practiced veganism, right? And so one thing that I saw, like in working with you and vegan outreach and like Food Not Bombs and others, is like there are people who do intersectionality work, right? And I can't put like people who are vegan in this bubble, right, and generalize them. And then I also started like meeting like African and other colonized folks who are organizers, and like learning about like they're like in New Mexico, it's very different because we're only like 3% of the population here. But when I think about the work in Minneapolis and New York and Texas, like the veganism movement is huge. It's like huge, and here it's less just due to like the population is less, right, around Africans, and so like they're so. But I know a lot of vegans, you know, who look like of all like race and ethnicities, and that's really really cool. But and they've been vegan way longer than me, and like I didn't know they were vegan. So that's been really cool to like learn about like ways and practices. Like I know when I first became vegan, like not eating cheese was the like so hard. And I think it was you, Tony, who told me about like the chemical that makes us want to crave cheese. And so like I went to reading articles and I was like, I knew it. I knew something wasn't wrong with me. I knew I was really craving it.
Yeah, you weren't losing much.
Yeah.
That was a real addiction. And yeah, that's so important to remember too, is how you say they've taken the narrative, right? And that gives veganism, you know, a bad name. Like people think it's something that it's not, or they think it's this elitist thing or this white people thing or something, when it's really, like you said, um, even a lot of our traditional, you know, truly traditional cultural foods were vegan. You know, the Three Sisters, green chili, you know, it's our diets really were centered around plants. And just
And
remember.
this colonial diet was introduced to us, right? And so, and that's what's created like so many challenges, like health challenges. And so like unlearning that, unpacking that, and being able to like find ways that we still are able to have that comfort food in ways that are healthier for our, you know, our mind, body, spirit, and soul. And so like that's kind of like the journey I'm on. And like even people in my family eat less meat. Like there's people in my family that are growing gardens. They're growing more food than I'm growing, you know, but we've been able to have these conversations with one another. And just for me, like them eating less meat is a huge win. And when I say that is not only like for animals, but for themselves and their own bodies, right? Because that food is just so harmful for us, and it's intentional.
Mm-hmm. And I was also going to say, you know, it's interesting just people's view of veganism and you know how the narrative has been stolen and all of that. You know, I learned about veganism from Wu-Tang Clan and Dead Prez. You know what I mean? Like I never thought of this like white or European version of veganism. It was like, you know, from Get Healthy and
Yeah, be healthy. Yeah, that's true.
and Take Back and be revolutionary. You know, following a plant-based diet, growing a garden. You know, that's revolutionary stuff. You know, that was the narrative I was listening to. You know.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah, thank you so much for gifting us that offering there. Yeah, there's so many people who've been practicing this for years and eating this for years and been preaching, right? That it is revolutionary and radical to have it be plant-based, because they saw, right? They
Mm-hmm.
saw like our neighborhoods and what was pumped in our neighborhoods.
Right.
Yeah.
So cool. We're about at time. I kind of want to wrap it up. If anybody has any last minute questions, please post them now. We had a great comment that I want to read. Someone said, love these thoughts about ego in the movement and the wisdom of kids. Shout out to Celinda for that jewel of wisdom that you quoted on her. Growth can be hard, but we have to evolve, especially in these times. Absolutely. And just kind of before we end, Monica, I want to ask, what are your favorite Black, Indigenous, person of color owned businesses to support?
Man, I eat at people's homes. But I would say Like Thai vegan, that's my spot. I'm not even gonna lie. Like me and my son live there, but not anymore during the pandemic, you know. But we still order there.
They know
I
my
don't know.
kids by name there.
Yeah, I can call and they're like, "Hi, Monica." um, um, how do you say the restaurant? Anhan Kwan.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Kwan. So like that would probably be my best spot, but it's harder for me to get because you know it's way up there. And I heard they went all vegan now.
They did, and they changed their menu.
Yeah. So I haven't been up there since they changed it. So that place is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But we eat a lot of like my son loves noodles. So any place that has like noodles, but you know, we like that home food, you know, so we're very blessed where people will like cook and be like, hey, you're vegan, what can I cook for you? And so we get to try different foods, you know, so that's really cool. So I will say, when I get to go to like Minneapolis, there's so many different restaurants there that I get to eat at, you okay? And so I wish we had more. I wish we had more restaurants here. I did like Jose's Tacos, but they're no longer here anymore. What kind of places do you like to eat at?
I like, thanks for asking. Thai vegan also, and An Hai Kwan, of course. We really like Green Jean Cafe. Have you tried them?
I haven't. They're on my list.
Locally owned, black owned, and they're Trinidad doubles. And
I didn't know they were black owned.
yeah,
Huh.
the food is so good. Yeah, definitely try them out. Um, what else do we like to eat? I mean, those are kind of our go-tos. I also really like Vagos.
Oh, okay.
Real like mom and pop, but their food is so good.
Yeah, somebody bought me food there once. It was really good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many. There's other little spots, but those are some of the go-tos.
There's a app that I have on my phone that I really, really like. I think you all had put together a list of different places to eat because I was like, where could we eat at? And this app, where is it at? It's like called Vegan Soul Food,
Oh,
and it lists all the different like states, and it has a few cities, like the major cities, and there it has a list of not just soul food, but all the vegan outlets, like I think it's Albuquerque and Las Cruces is what they list. And they also list like vegan products, and they list like a menu, like a food menu of like wanting to become vegan and like how to like 30 days, like 30 days to being vegan. So I really like that app. It's like called Vegan Soul Food.
that's
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Yeah. That sounds cool. And we like you said, we also have our list to our vegan dining guide on our website.
I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Vegan Soul Belly.
Okay, Vegan Soul Belly. I'll write that down. And I forgot. Yeah, somebody also said shout out to Raz Roadies or Raz. I'm not sure if you say Roadies or Roddies, Jamaican food truck in Santa Fe. I've not been up to Santa Fe like since they came to town, which is crazy. I like hardly even leave my house anymore. But I've been wanting to try them. Yeah, the next time I'm down there.
That's great.
I hear such good things about that place. And there's also a few Mexican and New Mexican places in Santa Fe that have that are local and that have vegan menus as well. That I kind of just want to do a food tour of Santa Fe.
I'm ready. When are we gonna do this? You know, it's a pandemic, so I'll drive behind you, but I love to eat. So let's go do a tour. That'll be fun. Maybe people in the webinar can join us. We just do a food tour and be like, this is why this food is good.
That would be awesome. All right. Yeah, people are down with this idea. Awesome. Monica, is there anything else you want to share? Any other way we can support your work right now?
I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be in this space and build community with you, Tony. I please drop in any restaurants you recommend to eat at that are vegan for sure. And I just really appreciate this time and space to, like, you know, chop it up a little bit. Mutual aid, I would say, like any organization that's doing food justice, that's supporting like community, please support. And if you want to donate to mutual aid or volunteer, you know, the website was shared. But any organization I say get involved in, you know, one thing I'm organizing with some young people, and next summer we have the goal to together in community to plant 100 gardens. Like we want to make sure people have access to food. And so if you want to get involved with that, to like stay in touch so we can see how do we do this at a community level where we have more food to share, especially like in our communities together. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And keep us in mind too with animal protection in Mexico, our plant-based eating program. If we can support or collaborate, you know, bring our resources, because we're on that same mission again.
Note it, you will be called.
Make plant-based food available, accessible, and just make, you know, make it just achievable for everyone, right? So awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Moneka. Thanks to you again, everybody that showed up and stayed the whole time. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So reach out. All right.
Thank you everyone so much.